Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rapping with the Rep. I'm State Representative Ken Gordon, and today we're going to have a bit of an unusual show, although I'm starting to forget what usual really is here on Rapping with the Rep. Today, as our special guest, we have Robert Parris. And Robert works here at BCAT, and he's been a tremendous camera operator, director, producer for my show, and I know you work with other shows.
Correct.
And it's been a pleasure and really a thrill working with you for a few years now. And what we did was Robert and I went to the State House one day earlier this summer, and we spent a day walking around and talking to some of the representatives and other folks who work in the building, because what we'd like to do is bring to you essentially a day in the life. You know, what's it like working at the State House? Just kind of separating some of the myths from the reality and getting to really see the people that are there. So Robert, I know you came, was that the first time? Well, you were at the State House previously because you did camera work for some of our events.
May is the month of kindness. I remember that.
You came to May is a month of kindness, and you were there when that bill got signed into law. That was really exciting for a lot of Burlington people. This time, we had really no planned agenda. We were going to see who was around.
Yeah.
What's your impression? Did you come away with an overall impression of when people would ask, how was that day?
I thought it was wonderful, and everybody that we interviewed, they seem that they want to help everybody, which is an excellent agenda. I love what they're doing. They're helping everybody in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I thought they were really great people.
You know, it's a good point that you're raising, because people who get into public service, for the most part, are the kind of people who are just nice people. I think for the most part, they're the kind of people who will hold open the door when someone goes through the door. They'll wait when they're driving and make sure a pedestrian crosses the road. I mean, it's as simple as that. They just want to do, the right thing. And so they're interested in running for office, most, because it's an opportunity to do nice things for a lot of people. I know there are exceptions to that rule, and we read about those exceptions in the newspaper all the time, but that really shouldn't overshadow the fact that most people are there just to do a good job and help people.
I was shocked when I saw the Arlington School perform their chorus and on orchestra, and I thought that was amazing. I'm like, wow, like all the parents were there, grandparents, etc., and we just got a time and place to film that and get the footage down. I was like, wow, this is going to be great footage.
Yeah, you'll see later on in the show that the kids from Arlington came to do a performance. In Burlington, there was a fashion show that we did about a year ago.
I remember doing that.
That was
really fun.
So again, this really is the people's house. We don't just talk about that. It really works that way. And so when we have an opportunity to bring our constituents, mine and then other reps and senators, we can do that and have people show what they do in their district. So let's take a look at part of our day at the State House. I think the first thing we'll do is that we'll talk to Representative Paul Schmidt. Now, the representative is from Westport. That's down in the southeastern part of the state. It's a pretty part of the state. And we share an office suite together. So we each have an office. We're next to each other. And it was a good place to start so that Robert and I could get a feeling for some of the people that we would run into in our visit to the State House. Let's take a look. This is Stephanie, his staff person, and this is Representative Schmidt. This is BCAT, and these are the people from Burlington.
Greetings, welcome. Come on into my office.
Okay, Burlington is coming into your office. We're visiting for the day. Representative Schmidt is serving now your fourth term, right?
I'm in my fourth term, representing Westport and parts of New Bedford, Fall River, and Freetown. And like Representative Gordon, I feel immensely honored to have the position that I do have.
And you are a vice chair as well, right?
I am, like you. I'm vice chair of public administration and statutory oversight.
Can you tell the viewers what that committee does?
Well, for instance, we deal with matters involving the Commonwealth, the government of the Commonwealth, and specifically I'm told that we may end up with some of the legislation that comes out of the marijuana committee's undertakings.
It's very important, and the municipalities, especially Bedford, Burlington, and Wilmington, where I am, where I know most about, are very concerned about what those regulations will end up looking like and what they're going to be dealing with.
Well, that's right. I mean, my municipalities all voted pretty solidly for legalizing marijuana, but the ballot question left a lot of details unanswered or perhaps slightly confused. So it's the job of the legislature to figure out how to bring legalization to the Commonwealth in a sane and safe manner.
It is. We have to carry out the will of the voters. Now, in my district, the 3 towns that I represent, they all voted no. But as you said, the majority of the voters in Massachusetts voted yes. So we can fine-tune the ballot questions so that, as you say, they make sense and they can be, they can be implemented. But we can't do anything that contradicts what the voters voted to do.
No, that's absolutely right. And for instance, one enormously unanswered question is, so what constitutes driving under the influence? And what sort of tests do we have available as we do driving under the influence of alcohol? And your police departments, my police departments, public safety are all very concerned about knowing the direction that they need to go forward on this.
So a lot of our constituents, and I bet both of our constituents, they read in the paper and they see that, or they focus on the work that we do on the day that we come in and vote on bills, which is very important. And it certainly is fair that we be judged that on our votes in that way. But beyond that, most of the work we do goes on in committee and preparations for the bills that we file. So can you talk a little bit about the work that goes in from your perspective as vice chair of your committee?
Sure. Well, as you know, Ken, at the start of each 2-year term, some 7,000 bills are filed, and each one of those bills will receive a public hearing. And at that time, we encourage stakeholders from both sides of any bill, both sides of any question, to come in and express themselves in front of this, in front of the committee. And committee hearings can last for a half an hour. They can also last all day. I think you and I have both been in committee hearings that got out well after dinner. But it's our policy to stay here in the State House until the last person who wants to speak has spoken.
Yeah, so Representative Schmidt, he's a nice representative to have as a roommate, very polite and a kind man. So while we were preparing to go out for our interview, we had a group of people come into my office, and they had an issue that meant a lot to them. And this happens a lot in the State House, is people will come in, they want me to be aware, and other representatives and senators to be aware of their issues. And you were able to watch some of that. Did you come away with any impression about, what we think about advocates or lobbyists, things like that?
Well, my impression of them is that people think they're just rich people coming in and be like selling this, selling that, but it wasn't like that. They just came in and had a conversation with you and I, well, mostly you, and talked about what the cause is, and they want you want to help. That's what they do. They just want you to help, and they're just having conversation. They're really nice people. They want to have this cause have a solution to it, and that's what I thought.
The bill basically does 2 things. It increases penalties for poaching, some of which are out of date in Massachusetts by about a century. And then it enters Massachusetts into a nationwide law enforcement network. So we're one of 2 states at this point that aren't members of this network. It started about 25 years ago out west when law enforcement agencies out there realized they were having a real problem with poachers crossing state lines, and they weren't facing the repercussions of their actions once they crossed state lines. So at this point, it's just Massachusetts and Hawaii that are non-members, which is different from last legislative session when New Jersey and Nebraska were both non-members. New Jersey joined last year. Nebraska actually joined on the day that the bill was heard this session in the Environment Committee, so they just joined in a few weeks ago. And basically the compact works sort of like a driver's license compact. So if someone were to lose their driver's license for, say, drunk driving in another state, they couldn't just come to Massachusetts and get a driver's license.
Okay.
But unfortunately right now, people can commit egregious wildlife violations in any other state, come to Massachusetts, and we have no mechanism for knowing that that's even happened.
When we were walking through the halls, you know who we saw? Our old friend, Peter Katusha. Well, he's not very old. But our friend Peter Katusha, who comes to BCAT, and he's been a guest here on Rapping with the Rep, and I know that he's done other shows here at BCAT, and he was coming into the State House to talk about an issue, and we had an opportunity to talk to him. So let's listen in on that one. So we're here with Sheriff Peter Katusha, and we bumped into here in the State House. What are you doing today?
Well, we're out here meeting with the Chairman of Ways and Means, myself and Sheriff Bellotti from Norfolk County. As you know, Ken, this building never sleeps. There's always something important going on. There's a meeting that's going on. And as you know, if you don't stay on top of issues, policy or budget issues, they tend to drift away at an important moment in their journey. So it's really important we stay on top of this.
Yeah, you're right about that. We just met with Steve Kulik, the Vice Chair of Ways and Means, talking about some particular issues. And you're a former state representative. Yeah. What we're really talking about is sort of a day in the life of the legislature. And you've seen it from both sides now.
Right.
What's your impression of the work that gets done here?
Well, I would say you can never predict what a day in the life of a legislator or as another elected official will be, because every day is different. You have meetings early in the morning in your district. You've got meetings later on in the evening in your district. You've got to be in the State House during the day, maybe during the district. But it's really, it can be exhausting if you do the job right, as I know you do, and so many others do. Because if you're doing it right, you're in the district and you're in the State House. If you're not doing it right, you're in the district or in the State House. But that's not the right way to do it. You have to do both if you're going to be effective as a legislator, to represent your district and then fight for your district.
Thank you very much, Sheriff, for the important work and the hard work that you do. We see you. I'm not that surprised we're seeing you here in the State House today. We see you out in the district. You're one of the hardest workers in the state. Thank you very much for stopping
Gordon,
by.
great to see you, sir.
Thank you. Earlier, when we opened the show, Robert, you mentioned that we ran into a group of kids from Arlington, and they gave a little performance. I think it was their chorus and their band, and it was a proud moment for them. And I think it was fun for us to see.
Yeah, it was. It was a great performance. I thought it was wonderful.
Let's see what you think, and let's listen to a little bit of it now. So many times we have members of the community coming in because this is a public building, it's your building, and we provide performances for people from public schools. Here is a public school from Arlington who came in with their treble chorus and their orchestra. Remember last year we had the fashion class from Burlington High School come in, and they did a fashion show here in the State House. So let's listen in to a little bit to the orchestra from Arlington schools. So when we were listening to that chorus, I ran into the Speaker Pro Tem. Her name is Pat Haddad. She comes from Somerset. That's also in the southeastern part of the state. Actually, Pat will tell you what the Speaker Pro Tem does. She works closely with the Speaker, and she gave us some time to talk about things that were important to her and her role at the House of Representatives. So let's take a little bit of time and visit with Speaker Pro Tem Haddad. We're here with Speaker Pro Tem Pat Haddad from Somerset. Yes. And we're talking about a day in the life of the legislature. And we've been talking to folks today who are, as you, hard at work. Can you explain to the folks in Burlington about the role of the Speaker Pro Tem?
It's in some instances, in some states, it's strictly ceremonial. But here in Massachusetts, the Speaker has made it a policy position. So weekly, there's a group of us who meet together to talk about various bills that have been filed and how they might be moved along, when they might be moved along. And so it's very interesting because in the small group we have the Majority Leader, sometimes the chairman of Ways and Means, the whip, the majority whip, and the 2 assistant whips, as well as the 4 people who are division chairs, myself and the speaker. It's a big responsibility, but it is amazing. And, just to give an example for your people, last year one of the policy areas that I took on was to create the wind industry, to bring offshore wind. Another was dragging the equal pay bill over the finish line. So although we meet on Wednesdays, there are so many other things. For instance, I began this morning out in Newton at an event that was done by the Clean Energy Center, and it was an event that partnered people who are developers who have the leases for the offshore wind with very local Massachusetts-based entities from the unions to electricians to welders to painters, to make sure that when this industry actually gets going, because the RFP will go out at the end of June, we're on schedule, that it will really encompass very local, small and medium-sized businesses. So it's, yes, I come from Somerset, but I find myself all over the place.
Right.
Because there are very, very important things that are happening all over the state.
Well, another example of your involvement was the help that you've given me on the bill that I filed on paid family and medical leave. I came to you and you said, okay, this is what we can do. We can get the stakeholders, including the business interests, together and find out what are your real concerns here.
Yes. And you did so much work in prepping for that. All of your research that you've done made it a lot easier for, like, I'm a novice with that sort of thing. So it made it easier for me to understand how there was a path and that we can continue to, to work towards that and include people so that small businesses don't feel that this is something that's going to be hard for them.
We know the communication that we provide is so important, because some policies that we have, if you oversimplify them, they sound like they would cause trouble. They sound like they wouldn't be good policies to enact. But then when you hear from the policymakers, they say, no, that's not what it does. Right. Or we've thought about that, and this is how. Suddenly, the same people who came to the table with objections realize, no, actually, this would be helpful to me.
Right. All right. And you keep saying bringing to the table. That is probably the most important thing that you and I do. Bringing all of the various partners to the table so that you can have a face-to-face. It's, you don't shuttle diplomacy doesn't work. Sitting at a table and making sure that everyone feels comfortable and confident in the words, because the words matter in laws.
Our next visit is kind of a fun visit. Representative Kay Kahn from Newton sits next to me on the floor of the House of Representatives and has been sitting next to me since the day that I was sworn in. And I'll tell you, we have fun. She is such she's a fun-loving lady, and we enjoy. Did you have an impression of our visit with Kay?
She was very funny, and she's very energetic, and she's very nice, and she wants to help people throughout the Commonwealth, as I said before, and she was just an awesome person to meet.
Thank you. Yeah, her husband ran a mental health treatment center in Brookline around Longwood. And she really cares. She's the chairman of the committee for children and families, people with disabilities. So let's sit in a little bit on our interview with Chairman Kay Kahn. We're here with Chairman Kay Kahn, and I've had the privilege and the honor to sit next to Chairman Kahn since I started in the legislature. We sit next to each other on the floor when we take votes, but what we're here to do on this show is talk about what goes on the other time, not necessarily when we're taking the votes or debating. That happens, and it usually happens for us on a Wednesday. But this is a very vibrant body outside of just taking the vote. So, Representative Kahn, you're the chairman of Children and Family and People with Disabilities, right?
Right. So it's children, families, and person. Okay. So I'm delighted to be here. I'll start out with that, and thank you very much for inviting me to be on your show. And I just want to put in a shout out for Representative Gordon. It's been a pleasure also to sit next to you in the House chamber, and we connect on many different issues. So it's really fun to have this opportunity. So I've been honored to be the House Chair of the Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities for the past 9 years, actually. So it's been a long time, and I have found that a great privilege because it gives me an opportunity to really kind of oversee all of the things that happen on the state level with regard to children. We work with the Department of Youth Services on children who come into the criminal justice system. We work with the Department of Children and Families. These are kids who are really often in neglected and abusive situations in homes. And we work with the Department of Developmental Disabilities, which really looks after those folks who have some sort of disability. And we work with we do a lot of work with the Department of Mental Health, mostly around juveniles, and I can't even think of all of them, but and also the homeless. We do a lot of work around what we call unaccompanied homeless youth. These are youth who, for whatever reason, have no place to live, and so so I'm part of a commission actually that's really looking at how to identify these young people and figure out how to bring them into a situation where they can get services. So the committee is a really very active, busy committee, and we work very hard, and we connect a lot with the administration because we work with the agencies, all these many agencies that I've just mentioned that come under the administration. So we connect with them, and lots of the advocates out there as well who are on the ground and really see what's going on, and they feel free to come to us and say, listen, we need to have you sort of weigh in on what's happening with these various agencies to really protect children, protect families, and so today actually, and we're a very busy committee, as you can imagine, trying to oversee all of the agencies that I just mentioned. So it's work that goes on, I'd say 24/7, actually. We're pretty busy, and we can get called by the press often. If something comes up, they'll call us, they'll ask us what's going on. And so we are, I have a staff of 3 that are just committee staff, and I have my own personal staff. So we all of us as legislators file many pieces of legislation, and so we're constantly, working on those pieces of legislation. Right now it's particularly busy because our bills are coming up for hearings, and today, in fact, I was a co-sponsor of a forum upstairs in one of the rooms where we invited people from the Citizens for Juvenile Justice organization, someone from the Kennedy School, and another person who represents ROCA, which is an organization that really tries to help young people kind of get back to becoming citizens, responsible citizens. These are often people who have gotten into the criminal justice system, or young families that are really struggling. So we had these 3 speakers today who really introduced to a very nice audience of folks who attended from the building, and it was about raising the age in juvenile justice. So at the moment, a youth who comes into the juvenile justice system, if they're under the age of 18th birthday, they'll go into a juvenile system. And because of all the research that's been done now for many years, we know that the brain doesn't fully develop or close the brain closure. The frontal lobe, I think it is, doesn't close until age 25. So now we're trying to raise the age to 21.
So one of the things that I learned when I started serving as state representative is that there are a number of representatives who come in, and sometimes they come in with real programs in mind. I mean, with me, frankly, it was, I'm an employment lawyer, and I want to help working people. I want to help working people in a way that also helps small business, so that everyone wins. We met with Representative Carolyn Dykema from Holliston. Carolyn has a laser focus on issues that involve the environment, and specifically she knows the most about water infrastructure. And it was great to talk to her because here in Burlington we have issues with water infrastructure, and on the town level we talk about water infrastructure, whether it be the water coming in, the waste going out, other issues like that. So we had a chance to talk to Representative Dykema, and I think you'll find it interesting. A couple of the bills that you've worked on have really gotten a lot of attention in our district. One is on pollinators, bees. Yeah. And I know you've gotten a lot of emails from our district. Can you talk about that bill and why it's important to Massachusetts?
Sure, absolutely. The bee health is not just a Massachusetts issue, but it's an issue nationally and globally. In fact, in looking at the declining bee populations around the world, it's a big concern, especially since about 1/3 of our food supply is pollinated by bees. So making sure we have protections for the bees is so important. One of the issues that my bill addresses is the issues of neonicotinoid pesticides, which are a category of pesticides that have been shown to be harmful and in some cases lethal to bees. So my bill, which came out of an idea, frankly, that came from my local agricultural commission in Holliston, which is where I'm from, is to really say, let's make sure that these pesticides, which are currently broadly available to anyone, are put into the hands of only those who are trained to use them appropriately and who understand the consequences of overuse and use where it's not needed. So hopefully by limiting the amount of these pesticides in the environment, we'll do better by our bees and hopefully increase bee populations.
It's a very important bill, one that's really got a lot of momentum here in the legislature. I know you've got a number of co-sponsors to it, right?
We do. We've got over 100 co-sponsors legislatively. We also have a number of groups that are supportive. Obviously, a lot of the environmental groups are very supportive. The local beekeepers, which I'm sure you have a lot in your district, have been very active and vocal in raising attention for the issue. And the longer we talk about it, actually, we're just starting to get a lot of industry groups, in fact, that are on board that we needed to talk to them a little bit about how it might impact the agricultural sector, for example, but a lot of them, because they rely on bees for their livelihood, they're starting to see that, this bill makes a lot of sense. So we're seeing more and more momentum behind it, and I hope we get it passed this session.
Now, you are the legislator that I think knows the most about water infrastructure in this building. You're the person that we go to for information on our water system. And in Burlington, we're in an ongoing discussion, and there's a tension between two sides of a problem, which happens often. And as the legislature, we can talk to sides of an issue in what we call a deliberative way. The issue in Burlington especially is that the aquifer, the water table that runs under the ground, is challenged. Can you talk about the work that you've done on that issue?
Sure. And I think water is the perfect example of how we in the legislature need to balance competing priorities. So with water in particular, on one side you've got obviously residents who need drinking water, you've got local businesses who need water to operate their businesses, and you've got environmental needs such as natural habitats that need water. How do we manage and prioritize all these kind of competing uses with a limited source of water to make sure everyone's needs are met? And never was this, I guess, more pronounced than recently this summer during our time of really extreme drought here in Massachusetts. And it really got a lot of people looking at, how we balance these priorities, especially when things are very constrained, and can we start planning earlier and hopefully head off some of these situations that you may have seen in your district where you have private well owners whose wells are running dry, or you have even municipalities. Like in my neighborhood, we had a municipality that had to have an emergency discussion about connecting to the MWRA because they ran out of water, which is concerning for residents and also for fire safety when you know that we rely on that to keep our towns safe. So I filed some legislation this session for the first time, which we're going to start this conversation. And what it seeks to do is really look at non-essential water use. So that's primarily outdoor water use that's not associated with industry, and how can we really manage that in a consistent way across a watershed. As you and I have discussed, within a watershed, all of the communities that pull out of that watershed are really drawing from the same water source. So whether you pull it out of community A or community B through the well, or out of your own private well for that matter, you're pulling it from the same place. So how do we recognize that? And my bill proposes to look at really statewide priorities, I guess, or limitations on outdoor water use when we are in a time of critical water need and drought.
Right. That's very important because residents of one town shouldn't necessarily be burdened with more restrictions than on another if they're both using the water from the same source.
Well, and if you think of upstream versus downstream, right, you want to make sure that everyone has equal access, and it's not just the upstream folks that have unrestricted water use to the detriment of those downstream. So it really is about fairness.
It was a fun day that we had at Beacon Hill.
It was really fun.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me on your show.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Great
I'm glad,
opportunity.
I'm glad we had a day like that,
Yeah.
and we'll have to do something like that again. Again, it's been a thrill working with you all these years, and we're going to continue to do great shows together here on Rapping with the Rep. Folks, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rapping with the Rep, and next time, maybe we can have an episode of Rapping with Robert and the Rep.
Rapping with Robert and the Rep. Next time.
Coming at you. Down BCAT. Thank you.